Engage.
Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant. Recently, in a previous video, I discussed the concept of travel time within games, specifically space games. Now, it's a subject that got fairly divided response, with many people agreeing that travel times in games like Elite Dangerous can be excessive. However, many other people argued that extensive travel time is a necessity. Now, as I mentioned previously, the idea was to always do two videos here, with the second video talking about travel mechanics. So in this video, I'd like to take the subject a little further and discuss the travel mechanics themselves. That is to say, the manner in which traveling works, along with any activities that a player can engage in during travel time, so the gameplay. Firstly though, to very quickly summarize the previous video, my opinion is that excessive travel times are not necessary, and that many games manage to convey scale without relying on time factors. Of course, your mileage may vary, and don't forget this is just an opinion. If you're interested in taking a look at that other video, then you can see it linked right now. So as I established previously, both Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous class as games that I do personally feel have excessive travel times. So these are the games I'm going to discuss in this video. And just to get one thing out of the way, I don't believe travel time has any rational gameplay relationship to scale and size. No Man's Sky, X4 and even the Outer Wilds feel suitably large without lengthy travel times. And we can also look further back in time. Frontier Elite 2, for example, had a massive sense of scale, and it did so without extending travel times. So I think it's reasonable to argue and very easy to make the case that travel times in Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen and EVE serve a very different function, and they're not related directly to scale. It is, however, related to gameplay. So the real question is whether or not the games make best use of that time and the associated gameplay. For anyone who's actually played Elite Dangerous, and I'm sure that would be many of you, and they've done so for any length of time, it's very easy to provide anecdotal evidence that a lot of playtime is actually spent travelling. Within elite circles, it's extremely common to hear people state that they watch Netflix or alt-tab out of the game whilst they're travelling. Now, a lot of people may think I'm being a little bit unfair here, so let's clarify what sort of time frames I'm talking about. On average, I'm talking about time frames of 20 minutes or more, and that is 20 minutes of hands-off gameplay. To be perfectly fair, Elite Dangerous has around about 15,000 inhabited locations that you can reach within 1 minute or 90 seconds of jumping into a system, but equally it has around about 3,500 locations, inhabited locations, that take between 10 to 30 minutes to get to, and these figures are from EDDB.io. Now, of course, there's also inter-system travel, that's jumping from system to system, which takes about 1 minute per jump, and there can be numerous of these. Of course, some people could do it quicker, but it does have to be factored in. So a short journey in Elite Dangerous is 5 to 10 minutes, an average journey is 15 to 20 minutes. This, of course, will vary depending on your gameplay activity, but it does serve as a reasonable baseline. In the previous video, I also demonstrated that Star Citizen uses similar time frames. You can get very quickly to close locations, a few minutes or so. Distant locations take anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. So with those times in mind, let's take a look at a few questions. So in Elite Dangerous, if we assume a travel time of 10 minutes or even 20 minutes, this will likely involve a few jumps across various systems and then some travel time in Supercruise. Most of this is going to be hands-off. Hyperspace jumps only require a few seconds with your hands on the stick. Supercruise doesn't require any time with hands on stick unless you get interdicted. The only thing you do have to watch is your throttle. So the majority of your playtime here is certainly going to be hands-off with little to no player agency. In Star Citizen, getting into your ship, powering up, aligning to a target and spooling the drives are all largely hands-on time. Quantum travel itself is entirely hands-off, regardless of the length of travel. The caveat to this though is overheating, which would require the player to change some settings and respool the drive. This, however, takes mere moments. To be fair to Star Citizen though, numerous travel-based mechanics are not yet implemented. The planned roadmap is to implement functions on board the ship that players can engage with during travel times. So whilst quantum travel is entirely hands-off right now, it may not always be the case. Now this one is a sticky question and is of course entirely subjective. That being the case, I will relay some opinions that I've seen from other people here and then express my own opinion. The first opinion is that hands-off travel time is boring. That sitting and looking at a screen whilst not interacting is not gameplay. It also requires no skill. Further, hands-off travelling means the game does not need my focus or attention. It's mindless, as I do not feel the need to concentrate or even to think about what's going on. The opposite opinion to this is that hands-off travel is relaxing. The travel time required conveys a sense of scale, providing for the feeling of a living, breathing galaxy. Time investment and the slow nature of travel times means that the game is a simulation and not an arcade experience. So these are essentially two extreme ends of the opinion spectrum. There are of course many opinions ranging in between these. Now personally, I place myself pretty much in the camp A and feel that hands-off gameplay is not compelling. I also feel that the Super Cruise flight model as well as the hyperspace flight model is nowhere near enough involved to be considered a simulation. The game Rogue System would be a much better example of what a space simulation actually is. Now I'm not going to make personal observations on this regarding Star Citizen, as there are still mechanics that need to be implemented. So, does travel time serve a greater purpose? Well, it serves a number of functions, and some people will no doubt consider some of my thoughts here to be somewhat cynical. Primarily, at least in the context of Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous, travel time is nothing more than a time sink. In gaming terms, that means artificially expanding play session time by introducing arbitrary time factors. EVE Online also suffers from this same issue. We can look at this in two different ways. Firstly, by getting hard data and showing the length of hands-on travel time, which I've already shown in the previous video. Or secondly, by looking at the anecdotal evidence of cases where people state they do other real-world activities or simply just watch a movie whilst travelling in the game. Simply put, their full attention isn't required for travelling. Now I feel that this is a realist view rather than a cynical one, and I'd also go as far as to suggest that this is a clear choice on behalf of the developers. It expands the game's playtime without adding any development costs. Secondly, and less cynically, for some people at least, long travel times convey a sense of scale. Now this isn't true for all people, however. Some people feel, for example, that Frontier Elite 2 had a massive sense of scale, however travel time was short as time could be accelerated. Multiplayer factors are perhaps among the most important aspects for lengthy travel times, however, as it gives players the opportunity to engage with each other, whether that is for PvP, hunting, piracy or evasion. This, however, in my opinion, is a byproduct of the design rather than a design intent. Regardless of timescales, multiplayer activities can always be introduced into a game, and lengthy travel times are not required to assist with this. Now there's three main alternatives that come to mind here. One of them I prefer far more than the others. Also, I want to state up front that I'm not campaigning for the games to be changed. I'm just expressing an opinion here, a long-held one at that. So option 1, instant or almost instant point-to-point travel. Now it's interesting to consider that this was the original design plan for Elite Dangerous. Frontier initially wanted players to jump from point to point within star systems, so this would mean that they would instantly arrive at their chosen destination. But there was a pushback against the idea from the original backers of the game, who insisted that a space game should be about space travel. Eventually, Frontier conceded and Super Cruise was born. But either way, whatever way we look at this, the point here is that instant travel was initially considered good enough by both Frontier and David Braben. Personally though, I would have been disappointed if things had been introduced in that way. However, it is a solution to excessive travel times. Now option 2 is faster travelling. Regardless of your opinion on travelling overall and the times it actually takes, I think that we can all agree that the time factor is certainly arbitrary. That is to say, the reason it takes 5, 10, 20 or any other number of minutes to reach a destination is because that due to a variety of reasons, the developers have decided that that's how it should be. In other words, there's no physical limit or barrier here. It's just a simple decision that the developers have made. So speeding up travel may possibly have knock-on effects to other areas of the game, but technically it is possible. Increasing travel time speeds then is a solution here. Option 3, keep it interesting, and this is by far my favourite option. Space is big. really big. It takes time to get anywhere, but these are game worlds, so we can travel at impossible, unrealistic speeds. But even still, that isn't necessarily fast enough. The bottom line for me here isn't that long travel times are innately a problem, rather it's that hands-off, long travel times are a problem. If travel times are going to be 10, 15, 20 minutes or more, then keep it interesting, keep the player engaged. Many gamers have crazy good attention spans and are able to keep focused and concentrate for long lengths of time. So rather than wasting this and having people just staring at a screen doing nothing, why not make use of it? But what types of things could keep travel interesting? Well, for that I'll look at GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Skyrim, and all of these are exceptional examples of what you can do when travelling. Jump into Skyrim, pick a random destination and then start walking. The gameplay will certainly not be hands-off. Before long, something will catch your attention. Maybe you are attacked, or maybe you are asked for help. Perhaps you find a cave which you decide to explore, which then triggers a quest or enables you to find a lost object. GTA 5, Red Dead are also famed for this type of gameplay. Now the problem here with space is that it's so large and empty. So really, you're not going to find a cave in space. You're not going to find a person lost on the side of a road somewhere. But really, concessions can be made here. Elite has the right idea with unidentified signal sources, but it goes nowhere near far enough with them. Interdictions are also another example of things that can be used here. However, they go nowhere near far enough currently. Why do they always lead to combat or scans? Why not introduction to missions? Why not people asking for help or any other number of things? Another way of achieving the same thing is to involve the ship itself in the process, and this is something that Star Citizen plans to do. It's an interesting approach, and I'm keen to see how it's implemented. The bottom line here for me then, the real takeaway point that I like to make is that I don't feel lengthy travel times are an issue, at least not in and of themselves. But that said, I also don't believe that travel times are needed in order to convey scale, and would cite numerous other space games to support this claim. I also feel that hands-off travel time is somewhat of a conceited concept. On a cynical level, it boosts engagement time without requiring development time, and on a gameplay level, it simply isn't engaging and does nothing to support the simulation side of the game. To make the point in the shortest way possible then, keep it interesting and give it variety. Now there's some awesome examples of other games out there that do this, so simply claiming that space is large and empty isn't a good enough excuse, because after all, these are games we're talking about, so yeah, keep it interesting. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.